Hey guys, welcome back. So in the previous lecture, what we did was we coded the HTML of our app, which was Easy ABC. We used the CSS files and we got the screen to look something like this. Now, of course, we need to start making things look like this when they load. You can see there is a placeholder div when the content is not displayed, and of course an image, and of course the letter will display. All that will come in from our JSON file. So let's start coding it step by step and see where we land up. Okay. So the first thing is, of course, when we have the left div, you do not need the content directly. What we can do is this will probably be another div which will hold the placeholder content, and that's what I called it. I think I named the CSS class as class name equals placeholder span. Let me go and check it. Placeholder span, yes. That was just the font size, so I just added it. Let's go there, let's add and say click next to view image. Let's save it, let's see what shows up, and you can see the div gets displayed. Similarly, let's copy the div and say let's put it in the right div as well and say click next to view the spelling. So now the screen should refresh, and as you can see, the content got updated. However, the content is not coming from our JSON file yet. So what we will do is let's import the JSON file. Now the way we import a JSON file is alphabets from, and you do a ./alphabets.json. Now you can see it that I have the same name alphabets.json that I will use to call my file, and make sure that you have the right extension, because unless it's a JS file, you need to specify what extension it is. Let's do that. Let's copy this and let's try to do a console log and try to print out what is there in alphabets.js. Let's see, and you can see an array of 26 items is what we see, which means if I need to access a particular object or a letter, I just need the index. So I can do two things. One is store this in a state, and of course create an index and store it in the state too. So let's try to do that. So let's go here and write our constructor. So the way we can do that is constructor props, super props, this state. Of course I have autofill, so it got filled for me. Now all I will have to do is set the state, which is alphabets to alphabets. So now everything is my state. Let's also create one more pointer, which is current position, which will tell me which letter it is. To start with, let's say it's a 0th letter. Now what we can do is, instead of A, we can display the state out here. The way we do it is this .state.alphabets dot, well, it won't be a dot, it's an array, so it will be a 0. And as you can see in alphabets.json, it is the letter. So what we can do is we can go back to easy ABC and do a dot letter. Let's try to see if it shows us the A again. And it still shows the A, which means instead of 0, if we use the this.state.current position, it should still display the A. Let's say if we make the current position as 1, will it display B? Let's try and see that. Well, it does, which means our logic for having a pointer and the alphabets is working. Let's replace that to 0 because I don't want it to start from a B. So it shows up the A again. How about the image? Well, simple. Instead of the placeholder, it should display the image. An image source has to be coming from the state, which is alphabet. So you can see the image source is nothing but this URL. So all I need to do is use this image. So I will do it is this .state.alphabets, and again I'll do a position, this .state.current position. So now I got that respective object, which means I got this object. Now in this object, the way I can access the image is using a .image. So let's do a .image. Let's save it and let's see what happens. It is giving me an error because of course the image tag is not closed yet. Let's close the image tag. Let me add some enters so that my face doesn't block the code. And voila, the image shows up so big, which means we need to add some CSS class, which is already somewhere. Let me move this to the next line, add a class name equals, let's go and see in the app.css what we can use. So far I can use button, left child. Let's see if there's an image, letter image. Yes, here it is. So I found the image CSS class and I'll try to add it out here. Let's add that image CSS and see what happens. And the size comes up, but this section also still displays, which should hide. We will take care of it as we add some animations and dynamic CSS class. So now that the image is displaying, what we can do is we can write an alt text. So usually every image in your application should have an alt text. The reason being that if the image doesn't load for some reason, and in that case you do not have anything else to display, then you will have a display of an empty word, or like a placeholder word that will come in. So let's say, for example, in this case I want to make it apple because it's an apple. So let's save that, and image of course loads, so everything works fine. Let's clear the image so that we do not have anything in the image, or probably have some junk. Let's say we have https abcs.com/image.png. I don't know if this even exists, and of course it doesn't exist. In that case, this will give me an empty image, and now the text gets displayed. But as you can see, the font is still higher. So what I will go is I'll go to app.css and add a font size to make it 1 rem, because I'm using everything in terms of rem. When I do that, if the image doesn't load, it will give me apple. I can make this dynamic too, because it may have happened that it's a bee or a ball or a banana. In that case, what I will do is, instead of apple, I can make sure that I use the word that I have. So the way we can do it is this.state.alphabets, this.state.current position dot word. Okay, let's see that if it still continues to give me apple, and it does. And if I change the current position to, let's say, B, in that case it should give me banana. You can see that. Now that was easy. Let me revert the image back to what it was. So let me just copy this and replace the image. So now I have the image and the alt text. The next thing is to display the spelling out here. So the way we can do that is in the right field where you have the placeholder div. Let's move it to the new line. Let's add another div that we need, which is div class name equals to, I think it's called word. It's called word. So let me add that class name, word. Close the div and let's display the word. So the way we can display the word is again very easy. The same thing that we gave with the alt, which is this.state.alphabets, and then you have the this.state.current position dot word. Let's save it and it should give me the word. However, if you notice, the word is all in lowercase, because if you see in alphabets.json, the B of the banana is uppercase, apple is lowercase. It is a little inconsistent, and the way I can make it consistent is by adding the JavaScript to uppercase function. Let's see what happens now, and everything is in uppercase. Now the only thing we need to do is hide the placeholder span. So what we will do is we'll add the class hide out here, as well as we'll add the class hide out here. So now the app looks a little more presentable. And of course, this needs to show up whenever the content is not clicked yet, which means the next button is not clicked. So this can be dynamically done. Of course, the next sound and previous will not work. And I just noticed a typo here too. I'm sure you might be yelling it when I was typing it. It should be sound and not song. Sound, I don't know, whatever that pronunciation is. Okay, so let's replace that. Let's remove the href and see what happens. I think the underline should go away as well. Let's refresh it too. and the href is removed, so the underline goes away. So that's your structure with the details display, which means the letter, the apple, and of course the spelling. In the next lecture, what we will see is on click of next, it should update to a new letter, and of course we will try to add sound to it. So I'll see you in the next class. Hey guys, so in the previous lecture we already got our HTML completed, and of course we also displayed the letter A. We got the left field, which was the apple, and the right field, which was of course the word. So we got everything to work from the display perspective. However, now we will start coding on next, which means when I click the next button, it should go on to a new letter, or probably one of the image or the word should display. So we will code that in this lecture. So the first thing we will try to do is we will add an on click on the next, because that's the obvious thing to do. So let's go and let's add an on click, which is here, on click equals, we will just give a new function. So let's actually give the function as this dot next. Now let's write this function next so that we do not get an error. Next. Let's also bind it so that we do not get an error. Let's say this dot next is equal to this dot next dot bind, and then this. So now we can get the console.log and say next button clicked. Let's save it. Let's see it in the console. For now, nothing. There is a warning. It says no unused logo. Logo is not used. So let me just remove logo from app.js. So this warning should go away. Of course, the array is still getting printed. So let's remove the console log here for alphabets. Okay, now all the errors are gone. This, of course, is related to a plugin. As you can see, it is for this extension in my Chrome. So don't worry about it. Let's go and click the next button, and you can see next button clicked as many times as we do that. So all we need to do here is update the state. So let's try to do that. So we will do a this dot state, or actually this dot set state, and then what we will do is update the current position to a current position +1, which was this dot state dot current position +1. So now whenever I click next, it should give me the new letter B, C, D, but you can see everything gets loaded by itself and there's no next on the button click. So what we can do is we can add another counter. Let's say we can call it as a current tick. Let's add it to the constructor, and current tick will of course have three values, actually two values, 0, 1, 2, and 2 will reset to 0. So let's say current tick. Now current tick is set to 0. So now whenever you click the next button, it should update the current position. So let's say if this dot state dot current, or actually current tick is less than 2, which means it is 0 or a 1. In that case, you will go in here, and what you will do is this dot set state current tick will be equal to this dot state dot current tick +1. So you'll just increment the tick. Now whenever you implement the tick, which is less than 2, but if it is the other case, which is it is not less than 2, in that case you will update the current position. Does that make sense? So let me elaborate. What we are trying to do is we are adding a click, which means now it's D. The moment I click next, the doc should appear. The moment I click next, another doc should appear. And the moment I click next again, E should come up. Let's see that in action. Let's save the file. Let it refresh. Let's see what happens. Let's say A, 1 tick, 2 tick, third tick goes to B. However, when you do the fourth tick, it will directly take you to C. The reason is when you set the position to new letter, which is let's say in case B or C, you need to make sure you set the current tick to 0 again, which means you revert it back to 0. So let's refresh the screen and let's see now every letter should tick 3 times before going to the other one. Let's refresh, tick 1, tick 2, and tick 3. You see that? tick 1, tick 2, tick 3. Now the only thing remains is displaying this dynamically. So what we can do is we can display this based on our class names. If you recollect, we installed class names in our previous lecture. Let's try to do that in this lecture as well. Let me close this tab. Let's open a new tab and let's do npm install class names and save it to. Let's call this. Let's go to our package.json and see if that gets updated. I think it's a very small library, so it should update fast. And you can see class names got added. Now we can very well go and use the class names. Let me close this. Go back to the CSS and the JS class. Now let's try to use the class names that we just imported. Let's say import class names from class names. Now if you recollect, the way we use class names is, it was very easy. So let me write it out here. So if you want to add a class name, you will do a class names. And then of course you will give a comma separated list of classes that you need to add. So let's say class 1, comma, class 2. Of course you can make this dynamic when you want to add a condition, and what you will do is it only checks for a boolean condition, which is true or a false. If it is true, it will add the class name 2. If not, it will not add it. So what we will do right now is try to create a variable. Let's say it's called show image is equals to, what we will do is we will check for the state of current tick, because we need everything to be governed by it. If this is not equal to 0, which means if it is 1 or a 2, it needs to display it. Question mark, true. If it is 0, it has to display only the letter. So let me show you on the screen. So if it is 0, it has to display only the letter, and this should be hidden. So you only show the image when the tick is this or the tick is this. And that's what we have done out here. Let me remove this extra class names. So now my show image is set correctly. Let's try to validate if show image works correctly. So let's do a console.log. Let's do this .state.current tick, comma, show image. Let's see when all the show image will be true. Let's go to the console. Now the current tick is of course 0 and the image is false. Let's clear this. Let's do a next, and it becomes 1 and the image should be shown, which is true. Let's click again. It should be 2 and true. Let's click again. It becomes 0 and false, which means the image has to not display. Of course, this is displaying because the condition is not yet added. So what we will do is we will use class names. So just like we had the image, which is out here, we'll use the class names out here, and let's copy the letter image because we need to retain this class. Let's add class names, and then in the bracket we can give the class names. First is of course the letter image. The next we can give is the hide, and it should be hidden when we have show image as false. So show image is false, which means you have to do a negation. Let's not do anything else. Let's save it, refresh it, and the image is not displayed. Let's click next. Image displays. Let's click next. Image displays. Image disappears. Similarly, we need to also add the placeholder div only in the opposite condition, which means whenever the hide is to be added, it has to be when the image is shown. So this div has to be hidden only when the image is shown. Let's do that too. So let's copy the same thing that we did out there. Instead of letter image, this has to be the placeholder span. I know that was a wrong word I chose. Show image will be true. So you add the hide class whenever show image is true. In the next, this should disappear and the image should come up. You see that? Now it works. Similarly, let's try to do the same thing on our div for the letter word. Let me just copy this span because, okay, we cannot use the show image because now this condition will be only for image. So let's add another condition. Let's say show word. And this word should display when this is double equal to, I think it will be 0, 1 and 2. So this is triple equals to 2. I think that should work. Let's save it. Let's add the same condition, which was show class names. Let's copy this for the class names of placeholder, which is out here. Let's replace it. Instead of show image, I will just use show word. So whenever the word is shown, this has to be not displayed. And of course, the letter has to be hidden as well. So whenever the class word is used, let's add that. Let's add the word CSS class. And also make sure the show word, whenever it is show word, which means it is not showing the word, only then displayed. Whenever it is supposed to show the word, don't add the class hide. Now let's try it. So tick 1, apple shows, tick 2, apple shows. B, tick, tick. You see that? So this dynamic condition of loading images and the word works very well. And it is fantastic. I love playing it. Now let's try to add some more functionality. Well, the previous is still not working, sound is not working, which we will try to address it in the next video. So I'll see you in the next class.